Welcome to Inner Authority. This podcast is for people who know that they are capable of more, not in a striving way, but in a quiet, internal knowing. It's for the people who've done a lot right, who are intelligent, who are self-aware, who are successful by most measures, but they still feel that tension inside, like something has gone slightly off track. Not because you're broken, and not because you need fixing, but because at some point you learn to lead yourself from effort instead of trust. Inner authority is about coming back from that. It's about restoring your relationship with your own knowing, your decisions, your direction, not by pushing harder, but by listening more honestly. My name is Kelly Brummer. I'm the founder of Start and Succeed and Inner Authority podcast. Each episode of this podcast is an invitation for you to slow down, to notice what's actually true for you, and to lead yourself from that place again. So if you're done outsourcing your authority and you're ready to come back into alignment with yourself, then you're in the right place. In today's episode, I want to talk to you about guilt and those guilty feelings and the impact that it has on our nervous system. Now, guilt is one of the most misunderstood emotions in self-leadership. Many people assume that guilt is actually a warning sign, a signal that they've done something wrong, that they've crossed a line somewhere. But very often, guilt isn't about harm. It's about change, transformation, evolution. It shows up when you stop doing something that you were trained to do, when you essentially interrupt a familiar pattern, behavior, or habit, when you choose differently than what is expected of you, especially if you've spent much of your life being the accommodating person, the reliable one, the agreeable one, the person who smooths things over. In those cases, guilt doesn't mean you're acting out of integrity. It means that you're no longer performing a role, and that can feel unsettling. But here's some important information to understand. Guilt and responsibility are not the same thing, two separate things. Responsibility is grounded, it's calm, it's clear. It says, I own my choices, my decisions, and the impact that has. Guilt, on the other hand, is emotional residue. It's the leftover sensation from years of being rewarded for compliance and punished subtly or overtly for asserting yourself. So when you begin setting boundaries, guilt often arrives smack bang immediately after. Again, not because you've done something wrong, but because your nervous system is adjusting to the change. And this is why clean boundaries can feel really uncomfortable at first. Not because they're aggressive or you're being selfish, but because they're unfamiliar. A clean boundary is quiet. It doesn't over-explain. It doesn't justify. It doesn't defend itself. It simply states what is true for you. And when you do that, others may react. They might be disappointed, confused, hurt. And that can cause problems because people think that you've changed. Air quotes, changed. And this is when many people get stuck because they mistake somebody else's emotional response for their own responsibility. And that's not the same thing. You are responsible for how you communicate, for being honest, for being respectful. You are not responsible, on the other hand, for managing somebody else's discomfort when you act out of integrity and authenticity. And that distinction is central to inner authority because without it, boundaries collapse under this weight of outsourcing our emotions to other people. So you start negotiating with yourself. Maybe I should have explained more. Maybe I was too abrupt. Maybe I should just go back to how it was. Not because the boundary was wrong, but because guilt is loud and clarity is often quiet. So one way to tell the difference between guilt and integrity is to notice the quality of the feeling and the emotion and how that's sitting with you. Integrity will feel steady, even if it's uncomfortable or challenging. Guilt feels restless, urgent, agitated. Integrity might say, this is hard, but it's true. Okay, it's difficult, but I'm okay. Guilt, on the other hand, is, well, I need to fix this now so I can get rid of this feeling. I don't like this feeling. And often we go back to where we were before because we just want that feeling to subside, to go away. But leadership requires the ability to stay with that discomfort without immediately trying to resolve it, especially emotional discomfort. Because if every boundary must be followed by explanation, self-correction, reassurance, it isn't really a boundary, it's a negotiation. And negotiations keep you tethered to that external approval from other people rather than what's going on inside of you. Now, clean boundaries, they're not about cutting people off, although you may lose people by actually standing in your own power and in your own integrity. But it's about staying connected to yourself. Clean boundaries mark where your responsibility ends. They protect your energy, again, not by force, but by clarity. And here's something that is very rarely said out loud. If someone only feels comfortable with you when you overextend, that comfort is conditional. When you stop meeting that condition, friction appears. That friction doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. It means the dynamic is changing. And change, transformation, evolution often brings guilt. Not because it's unethical, but because it disrupts familiarity. On the flip side of that, it's where self-trust is built. Not in the absence of guilt, but in your willingness to not let guilt make the decisions. Now, you don't have to like the feeling to respect the decision and the choice. Over time, however, something's going to shift. That guilt that you've been feeling is going to soften. Your nervous system will learn that nothing catastrophic happens when you honor yourself. And what remains from that is clarity. And that clarity becomes stabilizing. Now, this is how boundaries stop feeling so sharp and start feeling neutral. Like it's the right thing to do to put boundaries in place to protect yourself, your nervous system. And this is all about how you embody leadership. It's not about being loud or defensive. Just being grounded and coming home to yourself and trusting in yourself, gaining self-awareness, building self-belief, making decisions that sit with you. Before you move on with your day, just notice what shifted whilst you were listening to this episode. Not what you learned, but what settled. Inner authority doesn't announce itself loudly. It feels like a quiet agreement inside of you, inside of your body and inside of your mind. If this episode met you there, stay with the podcast and go and subscribe so that you don't have to go looking for this again. It will be here when you're ready to listen. No pressure, no urgency. Just a return to yourself, one conversation at a time.